5.1 Plan Scope Management. Plan Scope Management is a process of creating a scope management plan that documents how the project and product scope will be defined, validated and controlled. The key benefit of this process is that it provides guidance and direction on how scope will be managed throughout the project. This process is performed once or at predetermined points in the project. That's from the PMBOK Guide, page 134. So, Plan Project Management does not actually do any of the work of the project scope management. Instead, it creates a plan of how it will be done. It mentions planning how the project and product scope will be defined, and that is where you'll decide, for example, whether you're taking a predictive or an adaptive approach. As I mentioned in the previous video, taking a predictive approach means stakeholders meeting a number of times until the scope for the entire project has been worked out in advance and in detail. This can make the scope statement slow and difficult to modify in order to accommodate changes. And an adaptive or agile approach means having a scope statement that contains requirements at a high level, i.e. very little detail, and these details are not worked out until you're going to perform the work. This means that an adaptive life cycle can be easily changed to match changing requirements. Let's have a look at the ITOs on figure 5.2. Plan Scope Management Inputs, Tools and Techniques and Outputs. There are 4 inputs to the process: project charter, project management plan, enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, which we will look at in more detail. One is a project charter. The project charter is created very early in the project, and so it is quite a brief high-level document, probably just a couple of pages. It is used in this process to provide information on the project purpose, high-level project description, assumptions, constraints, and high-level project requirements. The assumptions are what you believe to be true during the project. You don't actually have to prove them, but you do need to routinely check them to find that they're still valid. And of course, you need to be able to justify why you believe them. Constraints are conditions that limit your team's ability to manage a project. Project requirements are what the project is intended to satisfy. Different organizations may use other names for the project charter, such as a project brief. Number 2, Project Management Plan. The Project Management Plan is defined as the document that describes how the project will be executed, monitored and controlled and closed. That's an important definition from the PMBOK Guide on page 716. As I mentioned in the Project Integration Management process, the Project Management Plan is a set of all sub-plans and baselines and life cycle for the project. PMI used to call this the project plan, but junior project managers often thought project plan was a project schedule, and so PMI changed the name to Project Management Plan. For the Plan Scope Management process, the parts of the Project Management Plan required are the Quality Management Plan. The purpose of the project is to deliver products that match specification. That is, they match the project scope, and so when you're creating the project scope, you need to be aware of the performing organization's quality policy, its quality methodology and any standards that are going to be applied to the project. The next item we will use from the Project Management Plan is a project lifecycle description, so that you can work out the series of phases, and also you need to know the development approach, which means whether you're using a waterfall technique or iterative, adaptive, agile or some other sort of mixture of these methods. Number 3, enterprise environmental factors. You will recall that these are the conditions which are outside the project environment and outside the team's control, but they do have a direct impact on the project. Enterprise environmental factors that may impact the planned scope management process include organization's culture, infrastructure, personnel and administration, and marketplace conditions. The 4th and final input to this process is the organizational process assets. The organizational process assets are to do with plans, processes, policies, procedures and knowledge bases that have been put in place by the performing organization. The particular Organisational process assets of interest to the plan scope management process would include policies and procedures, historical information and lessons learned from previous projects. That covers the input, so now we'll have a look at the tools and techniques. Number 1, expert judgment. You will find this popping up in tools and techniques of many processes. What does it mean? In general, it means the educated opinion of trained, qualified, experienced person or group of people. In the case of the plan scope management process, we're looking for people who have experience in planning and executing the scope processes. And you will also need input from a person or group with specific knowledge of the industry, the products and perhaps even the performing organisation itself. Number 2, data analysis. An alternatives analysis technique is valuable here. The time that you have the most control over a project and the time you can make changes for the least cost are both at the start of the project. Methods that you choose early can have a big impact on the outcomes, and so you need to get it right now, because any bad choices in the early stage will come back to bite you later on. And you need to analyse alternatives for collecting requirements, elaborating the project scope and product scope, creating the products, validating the scope, which means checking the finished product against the scope statement, and controlling the scope, which largely means managing changes to the scope. Number 3, meetings. This is our final tool and technique, and meetings, there's nothing really special about this. It's just the project manager and members of the project team and other stakeholders meeting together to discuss about the scope management plan. Now we come to the outputs, and it should be no surprise that the first output of plan scope management is the scope management plan. Earlier I mentioned that the project management plan is a collection of the sub-plans and the baselines and the life cycle, which describe how the project will be executed, monitored, controlled and closed. And so the scope management plan will become a component of the project management plan. The second output of the scope management, of plan scope management, is the requirements management plan. The requirements management plan is a component of the project management plan that describes how project and product requirements will be analysed, documented and managed. Components of the requirements management plan can include how requirement activities will be planned, tracked and reported, configuration management activities such as how changes will be initiated, how impacts will be analysed, how they will be traced, tracked and reported, as well as the authorization levels required to approve these changes. Required prioritization processes. Metrics will be used and the rationale for using them, and traceability structure that reflects the requirements attributes captured in the traceability metrics. You'll find more on that on PMBOK Guide page 137. A traceability matrix is a table that is used to link requirements to deliverables. For example, you may be building a house and one of the team members notices that there's a high level of traffic noise and suggests that the windows should be double glazed. This will also improve the insulation of the house. This is approved through the change management process system, and a row is added to the traceability matrix, and the typical fields on the traceability matrix would be the requirement number, the requirement description, which in this case is install double glaze into all windows, the requester name, which was the team member who requested, the requester position or requester department, the business justification, which is this will reduce traffic noise and improve heat insulation, the work breakdown structure code. This is the code for the deliverable and the work breakdown structure. We'll be covering the work breakdown structure later in this module. The test method in this case would be by measuring the noise levels and the temperatures. The current status, for example, in progress, on hold, testing, completed, whatever your organisation uses. A PMBOK guide is not prescriptive in many areas. That completes the lesson on plan scope management, and please note that in this process we're designing the traceability matrix. We're not entering data into it. The data will be entered in the next step in the process, which is 5.2, collect requirements. And as usual, please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the video.